Spring March, year 22, in the Saint Divine Land. 2. It was a lively sight in the capital, with flowers blooming everywhere. The begonias in the Gu mansion stood out above all, embellishing the garden with various colors. They were arranged in this manner simply because the second miss of the Gu mansion was partial to begonias. 4. Standing in big contrast was the Cheong Pavilion. It was a cramped and shabby house with weed growing in the yard. Almost no sunshine could penetrate through the place, making the surroundings extremely damp. Had it not been located within the area of the Gu mansion, this patch of land would have been mistakenly considered as a slum dwelling. 2. Gu Chaoyan felt that her body was sticky and cold. She opened her eyes and was blinded by the sudden light. Gu Chaoyan was dizzy and couldn't decipher the murmurs around her. Her head was aching terrible and her stomach seemed to be bloated. Was her belly full of water? Her clothes were soaked and the clothes clung tightly to her body. She remembered that she had died. But the color of her clothes was wrong. She was dressed in an outfit made of hemp material. Gu Chaoyan raised her hands and found them to be chubby and tanned. 1. She had never been so plump. Her skin was always pale and delicate and her face had been considered as one of the prettiest. 6. Oh miss, finally you are awake. A silhouette in light green clothes appeared in front of Gu Chaoyan as she tried to move her sore body. Miss, the old master said that once you are awake, you should go to the front yard, but I am afraid. The girl started to sob while speaking. It seems that your marriage with the prince is ruined. Miss, you loved him so deeply, but he treated you so ruthlessly. What will you do in the future? Madam went away when you were young, and the old master is being so. Miss? Prince? Marriage? What was going on? Gu Chaoyan was about to say something when a barrage of memories, which did not belong to her, appeared in her head. 7. There were 4 countries in the current world: the North Chi Land, the Saint Divine Land, the Feather Mulberry Land, and the Cloud Land. She was currently in the Saint Divine Land. The original host of this body was Gu Chaoyan, the lineal daughter of the Gu family in the capital of the Saint Divine Land. 2. Gu Chaoyan had been engaged to Lu Jiming, the prince of Duke Chengning, in their childhood. 2. Gu Chaoyan, the lineal daughter, was a chubby kid with extremely tanned skin. Ever since she was a kid. As she grew older, she became even more hideous looking. Moreover, she had a terrible temper and sometimes shoplifted things that belonged to other mansions and didn't even spare the servants. In the end, she was detested not only by her fiancé but also by everyone in the Gu mansion. 16. So, one day before her wedding, Gu Chaoyan received the divorce paper from Duke Changning's mansion. 1. She went to Duke Changning's mansion without hesitation and kneeled down in front of the mansion for hours, begging the prince not to divorce her. She cried and screamed and even threatened to take her life. In front of all the members of the mansion, Lu Jiming told her gently that he would withdraw the divorce paper as long as she jumped into the lake. Gu Chaoyan proceeded to do so without any hesitation, to turn herself into the biggest laughingstock of the capital. Understandably, her father was extremely furious. As far as Gu Chaoyan could remember, her second sister, the prettiest lady in the whole family, was involved in this plan too. 2. Gu Chaoyan had not expected that the original host of this body underwent an even tougher life experience than she did. She could not help but feel a bit sorry for her. Well, since she was now in her body, she was definitely going to get back everything that should belong to her and take the revenge that the host should have taken. Qing, stop crying and get me a mirror. Gu Chaoyan sounded calm and cold. Qing always found her Mrs. voice extremely beautiful, especially when she was not shouting like she frequently did. What startled Qing more was that she wanted to check herself in the mirror. During all these years, her miss had not checked herself in the mirror even once. When she was 10 years old, she had finally gotten the chance to go for an outing. On her very first trip, she was laughed at for being chubby and ugly. The story spread around that one of the girls in the Gu family was revolting to look at. From that moment on, her Mrs. temperament started to change as well. It was that day when she stopped looking at herself in the mirror. 2. Chang hesitated. She did not want to hurt her miss. Aren't we going to the front yard? Get me the mirror now. Gu Chaoyan sounded a little strict. She had been an agent in her previous life and was always resolute in dealing with matters. At this moment, she truly wanted to see her appearance, but this girl didn't move, making her irritable. 9. Listening to her commanding voice, Qing went to fetch the mirror without any delay. When the bronze mirror was given to her, Gu Chaoyan saw her reflection and almost passed out. Her face was round like a ball and her facial features were completely flat because of her dumpy cheeks. Her skin was extremely tanned as well. Gu Chaoyan sized herself up and found that she was dressed in shabby clothes. Absolutely scruffy, to be honest. 9. If not for Qing calling her as Miss, she would have thought that she was a beggar. Seeing her anguished look, Qing cried again. Miss, I am sorry. Gu Chaoyan became irritated. She didn't like weepy people, and this girl seemed to shed tears all the time. Sigh, she could do nothing about her, because Qing had been genuinely loyal to the original host. That was reason enough for her to treat this girl well. Actually, she just got a little startled a moment ago. She had not expected this body to look so unsightly. But now she was fine with it. Unlike the original host, she had an in-depth knowledge of medicine. It wouldn't be tough for her to lose the weight and remove the tan. What she needed was just some time. 16. Gu Chaoyan became much calmer after thinking through the matters. She spoke to Qing in a gentler way. Remember not to cry so easily from now on. No one will ever bully us again with me around. Come with me to the front yard. Qing threw a subconscious look at her miss. Her eyes widened in surprise. Gu Chaoyan had a pair of clear eyes, and in this moment, she looked calm, confident and rational. For some reason, Qing was tempted to believe her words. Without hesitation, Gu Chaoyan went to the front yard with Qing in tow. The atmosphere outside the Cheong Pavilion looked vibrant. Peals of laughter arose in the front yard as if nothing untoward had happened in the Gu mansion. Maybe they did not care that the lineal daughter of the Gu mansion had died due to drowning in the lake. The transmigrated Gu Chaoyan was well versed in etiquettes and discipline. 3. Although the protocols differed in different eras, she still managed to give out an elegant air, subconsciously. As they came to the front yard, a sharp female voice arose. Here comes the weirdo. No wonder the yard started to smell bad suddenly. 2. As the shrill words arose, even the servants covered up their nose and mouth as if something was really stinking. Just as always, Gu Chaoyan was greeted with disdain and mocking words. The Mansion's staff also treated her in this way. But this time, Gu Chaoyan was going to disappoint those people who intended to have a laugh at her expense. Instead of getting furious or cursing at those people like before, this time around, she treated them as air. She kept her back straight and walked forward elegantly. She did not even spare a look at Gu Xiaoying as she passed her by. It was as if Gu Xiaoying was a ridiculous clown in the middle of the path. Gu Xiaoying's face turned red with anger. She had intended to scorn Gu Chaoyan, but at this moment and in this place, she could do nothing but control her temper. 1. Gu Chaoyan ceased her steps as she entered the hall. 3 exquisitely dressed men were seated in the hall of the front yard. On the top seat was a man dressed in a snowy white robe with an auspicious looking belt around his waist. He had a great quality ink jade attached to the belt. A jade crown was nestled between his hair. 3. He looked so cold as if he had no interest in anyone in the room, not even in Gu Chaoyan, towards whom he showed no emotion. There was no disdain or loath in his eyes because of her appearance. That made Gu Chaoyan feel a little bit better. At least, he seemed to treat her and everyone else equally, even if it was with indifference. He gave out, he seemed to be a man with a noble status. Otherwise an arrogant man like Lu Jiming would not have allowed him to occupy the highest seat. 2. Before Lu Jiming could speak, Gu Shinkong, her father, stood up impatiently and bellowed at Gu Chaoyan with his outstretched fingers. Greet Lord Huai and Prince Lu Jiming now. Are you trying to bring more shame to the Gu mansion? Gu Chaoyan ignored her father. She greeted Lord Huai and Lu Jiming in a proper and calm way. Her manner was elegant, resolute, and sharp. I am Chaoyan, a commoner. Please accept my greetings, Lord Huai, Prince Lu Jiming, and father. 3. After she finished the salutation, she stood there motionlessly. Zhou Huijin could not help but take another look at her. She might be a bit overweight, but her eyes were clear and she had a poise about her. Even if she got to know that he was Lord Huai, she hadn't lost her composure while greeting him. This behavior was different from that of the usual noble girls of the city. She was quite unlike how the rumor had described her. Interesting. 8. Chaoyan's unusual reaction didn't go unnoticed by Lu Jiming, who was a bit surprised as well. Yet that feeling went away in a moment. He had wanted to cancel his engagement with Gu Chaoyan for a long time and today was the final chance. He could not possibly give up the idea because of her slightly better behavior. During the past few years, he had been mocked enough due to his engagement with Gu Chaoyan. He was the prince of the Duke Changning and had all the rights to marry a better girl. Why must he marry this hideous girl? 2. Obviously, he had totally forgotten about how he almost lost his life, but for Gu Chaoyan's mother. 4. He showed absolute disdain on his face and said, Gu Chaoyan, I am here today to cancel my engagement with you, with Lord Huai as my witness here. Don't start with your emotional blackmail again. I know you love me deeply, but you have to look at yourself in your own urine before aspiring for me. 13. He continued speaking in a raised voice. This engagement has to be cancelled today, whether you like it or not. Gu Rushui gestured to a maid to bring a paper and pen immediately. Lu Jiming grabbed the pen and started to write. It was as if he could not wait for even one more second before he could write anything. These were Gu Rushui's servant girls. When they received the order, they didn't hesitate for even 1 second. Gu Chaoyan sneered, and allowed them to hold her, not bothering to resist. It wasn't until Lu Jiming's divorce letter was thrown in front of her that the 2 servants released her. Gu Chaoyan squatted down with difficulty, trying to pick up the letter. The moment her hands touched the paper, Lu Jiming sneered. Repulsive. Weirdo, don't think that it wouldn't count if you tore it. 1. Instead of looking at Lu Jiming, Gu Chaoyan threw a look at her so-called father. Her father was pretending as if nothing had happened. He seemed to think that this girl, who was being humiliated at the moment, was not his own daughter. As expected, he did not utter even a single word in protest. No wonder Gu Chaoyan was bullied so dreadfully during these years. She sneered. Gu Chaoyan was dressed in a shabby outfit because the Gu mansion had never provided her with any new clothes. Her Laguda sisters in the past had also come to beat her up in a cluster, making her clothes become even worse. Even then, she adjusted her clothes elegantly and put the letter away. Then she leveled a calm look at Lu Jiming. From this day on, I have nothing to do with you. She spoke in such a serene way. 1. As if it had been her intention all along to get this letter. Everyone in the house was surprised, even Lu Jiming felt slightly astonished. This woman had been flattering him since childhood, and would do anything he asked her to. Things in the past few years. For example, 2 days ago, when he asked her to jump in the lake, she really did it. But this time, she seemed to have such a composed reaction after getting the annulment paper. Lu Jiming felt a bit displeased. He had intended to leave right away, but suddenly he started to act benevolently. With his eyes upon Gu Chaoyan, he said in a commanding tone. You want to marry me, right? 1. Gu Chaoyan stayed silent and privately mocked him for such conceited words. Since that is your biggest wish, then I can give you a chance. If you are able to do this one thing, I can marry you as a concubine and allow you to come to Duke Changning's mansion. After all, I am a generous person. Lu Jiming looked really arrogant at this moment. 5. He was waiting to see Gu Chaoyan make a fool out of herself once again. 2.